Infrastructure as destiny is a phrase I happen to really love. It was made popular by Robin Chase of Zipcar. She pointed out how highways and the internet provide and shape opportunities in all sorts of different ways. And I think that phrase is even more applicable right now to energy infrastructure, not just in terms of affordability and accessibility, but also in terms of climate change. Especially right in this moment now, we have the chance to change that infrastructure in ways that I think is it's a chance that we have that's bigger than any other time in Massachusetts history, where we're not only trying to figure out how to decarbonize, but we're also re-looking at the gas utilities and their infrastructure, as well as how the electric utilities will deliver the needed electricity the electricity we need to be able to move all of our energy needs to clean electricity. So I'm just going to say, this is the moment. If you ever wanted to get into energy, you can be a hero. So you want to be a state regulator, you want to become an energy analyst, and of course, you want to become an energy activist or academic. Do it now. It is like the biggest, most exciting time. And so again, I'm gonna again say that I'm not with Heat anymore. I'm now with HEETlabs. It's a climate solutions innovator. I find really big problems that currently no one is taking effective action in. And I use the black swan as my logo because, black swan events are highly unlikely events that can have, really big impacts. And most people think of things like COVID and Fukushima, but it can also mean things like discovering penicillin and passing civil rights. So it's just as likely to be a good impact as a bad impact. And that's why that's the logo. So I'm going to talk about, and Pat will probably love this photo, about how a very small nonprofit organization at that point, I think with just two people in it, uh, helped encourage both National Grid and Eversource to install geothermal heating and cooling. And it is that, they're the first installations in I think the country by gas utilities. So this started off way back in 2014 when I got really interested in gas leaks, and partly because there was a Boston University professor who published research showing that there were over 3,000 gas leaks in just Boston alone, and that those gas leaks, because it's methane, which is such a potent greenhouse gas, that those gas leaks erased all of the state's energy efficiency programs. So I began to look at gas leaks. I found this really arcane filing on the Department of Public Utilities website that listed by address all of the gas leaks across the state. So I spent a summer with some volunteers mapping all of those gas leaks. There were, 350 towns, I think of it. And, it got a lot of news, including top of on the Boston Globe, above the fold, which meant that all the gas utilities suddenly focused on heat, which they'd never heard of before. And that those gas leak maps got a lot of interest with legislators too. I would bring the maps in to legislators and others, and everybody would always like zoom in immediately to their home or their school or their business. It made the global very, very local. And so, but we didn't know quite what to ask for, right? Because the gas utilities couldn't fix all, roughly at that point, I think 30,000 gas leaks across the state. So then we learned from research from Boston University about super emitters, which are those, roughly 7% of leaks that emit half of all the gas by volume. And so bingo, we knew immediately what we wanted to do, which was have the gas utilities fix these super emitting leaks. But the problem is they didn't know how to identify them because they'd always been focused before on safety, and safety meant gas leaks in a small contained space, because if gas cannot explode unless it's between 5 and 15% of the air by volume. So if it's less than 5%, you can't, you can't light it on fire with a match. And if it's over 15%, you couldn't even use a flame torch and get it to explode, which is sort of fascinating. So they'd always looked at contained spaces instead of like these big gas leaks that could be just in the middle of the street and not being contained. So we worked to persuade the gas utilities, which we were by then beginning to get to know simply because they were sort of flipped out by the gas leak maps. Um, uh, so we connected both with Columbia Gas of Massachusetts, which is no longer working in Massachusetts now, as well as Eversource. But we couldn't get National Grid to, and both of those companies agreed to participate in the research study to try to figure out how to identify the big gas leaks, the super-emitting gas leaks, so that they could be repaired. But we couldn't get National Grid to talk to us. So here's trick number one. So I guess I should say trick number one first is talk reasonably to gas utilities or to whoever you need to talk to. They're the ones who can repair the gas leaks. I can't repair them, not with a shovel. I don't have a backhoe, etc. I don't have the expertise. They're the ones who have to do it. So talk, nicely, reasonably to the people you need to talk to. Explain the reasons why they should be listening to you, and uh, you know, uh, research is a great way to get them interested. Because if you talk, about how you can research and prove the results in a data-based way, they don't get quite so worried that you're going to just go crazy on them in many ways. So, but we couldn't get National Grid to focus on us or meet with us. So we had a demonstration where people dressed up as large gas leaks in the bright inflatable orange tube. And we trended on Twitter through Mothers Out Front. And that got National Grid to meet with us almost immediately, like 2 days later. And I just want you to focus for a second on the smiles. They're not the most comfortable. So anyway, we now could do the research study with all three of the major gas utilities in the state. We did so. And we came up with a easy proxy method that was highly accurate that worked with the gas utilities, for the gas utilities to identify the super-emitting gas leaks. And this is whatever I'm at, suggestion number three. We arranged this whole thing from the very beginning to have a summit at the end of the summer, at the end of the research study, to announce the findings. And we asked the heads of the gas utilities at the very beginning of the summer to come and speak at this summit. At MIT, very prestigious, sounds so exciting. And gas utilities rarely, if ever, get to present with environmentalists. And we made sure to invite every regulator we could, every legislator we could. So the gas utilities really wanted to be there. And so once again, we had that same sort of problem where Columbia Gas immediately agreed to, yes, of course, we should use that proxy method, the identification method you came up with. And Eversource also agreed, but National Grid was a little bit slower. So the Sunday before, I think it was like 2 days before the summit, the head of National Grid called me up with like 15 people on the call. And all of her experts, and she basically berated them until they would agree to do what we wanted them to do so that she could go and speak at the summit, which I thought was just, so once again, giving a carrot as well as doing demonstrations, as well as talking about, like, we're unbiased, this is research. These are ways to begin to pull in the people that you need to pull in to get them to listen to you and do what you want. And so even before the summit was done, we'd already started our new research, our new project, which is I'd figured out that the gas utilities were spending an extraordinary amount to replace old gas pipes with new gas pipes. And this data is 10 years old, so it's radically out of date. but, or not quite 10 years old, but the prices are very much out of date. But I did an analysis finding some really expensive streets for this gas pipe replacement. And then I multiplied out across the state, the total cost for all the leak-prone infrastructure to be replaced at the current cost per mile. And I found it was over $9 billion. And later on, economists came in and said, like, that's nothing. I didn't factor in the cost of capital and all these other different fancy things. And so it turns out to be basically over 40 billion with a B dollars that they will be spending of ratepayer money, customer money, to install new gas pipes that today, we're only probably going to use those gas pipes, the majority of those gas pipes, until 2050. So anything installed today will only have 25 years of a lifetime in the street. And that's a waste. That's called stranded assets. It's a bad idea economically. So we went into each of those gas utility offices, to the presidents of each gas utility. And we said, hey, we've got a crazy different idea. First off, you're installing stranded assets today. You can't imagine the craziness of going into gas utility presidents back then, which was 7 or 8 years ago now, and say, hey, you are going to go bankrupt. You're installing stranded assets. You need to change your business model. But that's what we did. And we said, install something that can be non-emitting, non-combusting, and that can deliver not only heating, but also cooling. And so we suggested networked ground source heat pumps or networked geothermal. It's a closed loop system, so you're not using any reusing, you're not refilling it with water. It's an ambient temperature system, which means it's somewhere between 40 and 90 degrees approximately. It's a single pipe. And what the gas utilities do is they just deliver water at a reasonable temperature where heat pumps in the home can then take that heating or cooling that they want. And a heat pump is sort of like a fridge that can run forward or backward, that it can pump heat into or out of your home or building. Hopefully everybody's with me on that one. So the so each of the gas utilities, we went first into Columbia Gas, and he gave us great, like, use this terminology. Don't say that. That's really offensive. He gave us nice advice. And then we went into the next one and he did the same thing. And then we went into and so we iterated again and again, each time improving. And Evershore said, hey, you know what we need? We need a feasibility study showing us that this is possible. And so for rock bottom price, it was extraordinary. Burrow Happold kindly, which is an international engineering company, we did an RFP, et cetera, et cetera. But Burrow Happold won the RFP, did a feasibility study for statewide, showing that this networked geothermal system, which we at that point called GeoMicroDistrict, could actually meet most of the energy use we needed in Massachusetts, where the gas utilities were. And so Eversource said, thumbs up, love it. And they asked state regulators, hey, can we install one of, a few of these as a pilot? And the Department of Public Utilities actually said, yeah, you can do one pilot. And so then National Grid was like, okay, we want to try it too. And they asked to, I think, install 4 of them. And I think that the Department of Public Utilities said that they could do up to 4 and a certain amount of money, which is extraordinary.
Wow.
It's like crazy. And so Eversource has now installed and it's live, the system in Framingham. You can go there. The only thing you're going to, like you go to most renewable energy things and you see, all these solar panels, or you see all those wind turbines. In this system, there's nothing to see. It's all beneath the road. It takes up no surface area. And so it's just, it's so cool. It's 140 units, includes part of a school, part of a fire station, all sorts of, businesses, low income customers, single family homes. And it's on now. And National Grid's installing one in Dorchester. I think it's 160 units, but I sort of lost track at this point. And what National Grid's going to be doing, which is so exciting, is it's going to be doing full electrification, meaning it's going to take out every single gas appliance in the buildings and replace them with electric appliance. That's a gas utility doing electrification, thrilling. So Heat's actually got a research team with a whole bunch of different, national labs and universities, and also I got just a few of the logos. They will be looking at best practices, how to optimize the system best to decrease future costs, and many, many other things. Um, because this made such huge news, that first ever Source Framingham installation, I mean, like it was talked about in Ukraine. There were stories in I think in Mongolia or something. I can't even tell you. It was everywhere.
Wow.
Um, there have been a variety of states that have passed laws to allow gas utilities and others to install these sorts of systems. And I'll tell you that in New York, this is the one that makes my heart most happy, is it was a combination of environmentalists, gas utilities, and workers, so that unions, so that you had the trifecta. And this law passed, I think, in 3 months, nearly unanimously, which is just stunning. There's lots of other states that I've lost track of them also that have also passed similar laws. And then I went around and started to talk to lots of gas utilities across the country about this Framingham installation that you can see in the back. And I would explain it as a business model, because you always want to have like what's called theory of mind, which is you talk about how what you want them to do meets their needs. And so I would do that. And they were like, huh, wow, that sounds cool. It's safer. I could get, a lot of profit. It would lower my customer bills. It would provide cooling. And just like they would just name they'd understood all the benefits. So with me and a few other people, we got over 28 gas utilities across the country involved in a coalition which meets regularly and of gas utilities representing almost 50% of all the gas customers in the country. And they're looking at this model to figure out how they can install it and how it can meet their needs. I'm going faster now. So what the next thing is that the way we're going currently forward to electrification, one by one, a gas customer is moving off of the gas system. And that means that every customer, there's fewer and fewer customers paying into that gas system. So it's each person getting off the gas system raises the price for everybody else. At some point, everybody who can get off the system will, because heating with air source heat pumps will be less expensive. And so the only ones who remain in the end are likely to be those who cannot afford a new heating system or those who are renters. That's not the sort of just transition we want. So, and the Germans call this the last grandmother problem, where they imagine one last low-income grandma who's renting on the entire like national grid system, trying to pay for the entire gas system. We're like, that's not a good system. That's not a good way forward. Instead, if you imagine the gas system as a tree with its branches spread out across the state, what you want to do is prune back that tree and graft on a new system, piece by piece by piece, in a thoughtful, tactical way, so that we can meet our net zero emissions mandates. So in order to do that, what we need is a tactical thermal transition, where we take electric utility information, like how constrained is it, and how old is the gas system on that street, and how much energy use do you need on that street, and you figure out in an algorithm how to transition the entire gas tree, branch by branch, for the least cost and with the least disruption, to that non-emitting, safer thermal system that we need. Um, so We are, there will be, with luck, some legislation being suggested that covers some of these ideas. And that is things like that. We must have statewide phased integrated gas and electric planning, granular to the level of the street segment to meet the limits and sublimits of Chapter 21N, which means the emissions, and the DPU mandates. It should be overseen by the Department of Public Utilities. It should be overseen by the Department of Public Utilities and a council convened by the Office of Energy Transformation to make sure it's being done right. There should be performance-based incentives so that if the gas utilities and the electric utilities do it better, they get more money. If they do it worse, they get less money, right? There's some, they should have to increase year by year the amount of money they are spending on non-emitting thermal infrastructure, like that networked geothermal system, and less money every year on gas infrastructure. That gives them a time, sort of a ramp up time period that's reasonable to get the workforce ready to meet their supply chain, et cetera. And there should be lots of transparency to make sure the public knows about what's happening. As part of this, non-combusting thermal must be considered an equivalent substance to gas as an essential service, so that you can't have like a street where 99 customers are having thermal and one person at the very end is like, I want my gas stove. And for that one person, you have to keep that unsafe gas or expensive gas main delivering just for that one gas customer. So instead, this would mean that thermal is the same thing as gas, and that that customer has a choice of propane or electricity. And they always have a choice, but workforce, gas workers should be retrained and transitioned with their pre-existing wages and benefits. And if this integrated gas and electric system, electric system planning results in any avoided costs from the efficiencies of scale, from the reduction of electric system upgrades that are needed, any savings at all, those 70% of those avoided costs will go towards building retrofits, because the building retrofits are going to be expensive. And low and moderate income customers must be prioritized. And I think I made some typos there, but pay no attention to that. And that's it, I think. Oh, and wait, I was going to show you one other thing. When necessary, to get whoever you need to pay attention, you can always do a demonstration. And so what we would frequently do is, like with Mothers Out Front, which is a large activist organization, we would ask them to do a demonstration and to give them the information they needed to be able to do the demonstration in some place smart, like where there's a big gas leak. And then we'd give them the megaphone, we'd get the reporter there, we would do everything we needed to make sure we had the news. We got we had the drone shot, everything to make sure that we could go into the gas utilities the next day and say, oh my God, that's terrible. And so that is the scoop. Thank you. I'm gonna have to figure out how to unshare.
Let's see.
For some reason. Okay, there we go.
There we go. Well, bravo, Audrey. That's just magnificent. Yes. Open for questions?
Yeah, what's the state of the project, Framingham project now, Audrey? Is it producing energy?
Yes, it's on. It's delivering temperature to, I think it's 140 different units, including, like I said, a school or part of a school, a fire station, some businesses, a lot of multi-unit low-income houses, and some single-family market rate homes.
Wow, and Framingham of all places.
So yeah, what is a bill do you get charged kilowatt hours or BTUs? How are
Yes,
people billed?
you have your electricity bill will be, assuming you don't have electric baseboard
Got it. Okay.
beforehand. Your electricity bill will probably be higher, right? If you don't, will absolutely be
Yeah.
higher. But minimally higher because this is the most efficient electric method of delivering heating and cooling known. And then there's also a minimal amount that Eversource for this pilot is charging as a thermal charge to show that customers will pay and that they are to have them participating in a monetary way in the program.
Mhm.
But nobody really knows yet how much it will cost. The regulators have to decide on how much the customer bill will be for the thermal
Mhm.
customer
Mhm.
and how they will bill. Will they bill on gallons of water going into the building? Will they try to do BTUs, size of the building, type of
Mhm.
energy, etc. But every prediction I've seen says that in the end, the total energy bill should be lower than lower or the same as it would be with gas, which is stunning because I think it's the only system I've heard of electrification where it is predicted to be as low or lower than gas.
So Steve Wenner, you have your hand
Yes,
raised?
Audrey. I was just wondering what other towns are in the pipeline for network geothermal. I think I heard that Leomeister was in there with National Grid, I think.
No, National Grid's proposing another type of electrification pilot there where they just do air source heat pumps. They do not want to do thermal network there. And I'll call it a thermal network because I find that a little bit easier to say if nothing else. But National Grid still has several pilots that they can install. I do not know if they will or not. It will they're going forward a little bit slowly on this. Eversource doesn't have any more pilots currently approved, but there are, I think, 12 different communities that are doing feasibility studies. There's a lot of, and the Department of Public Utilities has said, like, we want more thermal projects, install more thermal networks. We want them. So I assume more will come along soon. And there
Awesome.
are installations happening across the country too. And Framingham, of course, has the second installation going in that will interconnect with the first. And that's going to be paid for by partly, I think, by the Department of Energy. And that will show both that hopefully that once you interconnect, the system becomes more efficient and less expensive because the cost per customer is lower in comparison to the infrastructure. And because the bigger the system is, the more chance that there's several people heating and several people cooling all at the same time. And so you get sort of synchronous load cancellation. That person heating cancels out that person cooling.
So Paul Scudder.
Yeah, I appreciate everything you've said. I think it's all wonderful. I'd like to give you one little piece of perspective. As a bit of a green freak, among many other things, I've replaced my gas boiler with an air source heat pump. It is inappropriate to suggest that this is cost effective.
No, so an air source heat pump is different than the system I'm talking
Well,
about,
I
just to be
understand that,
clear.
and one part of your discussion, you commented, I think it was in the earlier part, that air source heat pumps might save the customers some money. Until the electric rates come down quite a bit, and I'm a person with a lot of solar on my roof and whatnot, let's just say that I'm paying a lot more for heat this winter.
Yes, absolutely. So
I'm
it's
still happy to do it, but I'm paying a lot more heat for this, a lot
Yeah.
more for heat this winter.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. It's always hard to predict energy bills in the future. We can all think about how volatile gas and electric bills have been. But by and large, there are a variety of predictions that say that
But
air source.
we've seen those predictions, and I'm simply talking about the current reality.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about the future, and it could
Right.
be, but that's, you know,
The current reality is different than what we hope the future will be. That's my only
yes,
comment.
yeah, absolutely. And I have an air source heat pump, and I pay more for it, and that is a huge.
I'm just trying to be
huge
open
problem.
about that with the rest of the audience.
Yeah,
So,
no,
so I would just jump in and say that, you know, Mara Healy has put together a working group to look at the electric rate designs in the state, because we realize they're upside down. It's going to cost you more if you convert from natural gas to a heat pump. And so they just released a report with recommended short-term changes to adjust the rates. And then they are working on a longer
Let's give them a
term.
lot of encouragement.
Yes. So one possibility would be a discount on electricity during heating season for people who have a heat pump. So they're looking at all different, and then eventually they're looking at time of day rates. So the thing you brought up, Paul, is really people are trying to figure that one out. It's not an easy one.
Well,
Yeah,
I'm
it's
glad
really
to hear
not
it.
an easy
I'm
one.
glad they're trying to figure it out. And again, I'm comfortable with what I've done. I knew it was coming when I did it.
Right.
I just wanted to be certain that the group understood the reality.
yes.
No surprises.
The reality will be different tomorrow. Okay, we're talking two kind of realities here.
Right. Well, right
Right.
now it is more expensive. Millie, you had your hand up?
I have my hand up, but I know that Hampton was trying to get a word in
Oh,
before.
okay. Hampton, there you.
Thanks.
You're first, then Millie.
Thanks, Millie. Audrey, first, hi, and thanks a lot for presenting this evening. Two different questions. I know that, for example, the longstanding district heat has been implemented widely, and we have one right there in your current hometown, Cambridge, with the MIT, and then the power plant there on the river in Kendall and so on. What kind of a density do you need to make these systems, particularly for residential, cost effective, is one. And two, what sort of subsurface is needed for these to be truly effective? Will it work, for example, in Plymouth's glacial sand?
So district heating system is different than the system I'm talking about. Right. So it's a geothermal network with ambient temperature. Water delivers both heating and cooling. The water is not heated in any way. So that's separate from Vicinity's steam system or MIT's steam system or Harvard's steam system, just to be clear.
Right.
Secondly, in terms of this type of system, what kind of density you need is basically pretty similar to what the gas utility system is, which is if it's too expensive to run a pipe between the buildings to deliver gas, probably going to be too expensive to deliver ambient temperature heating and cooling through a thermal network. So in a way, it's a beautiful overlap. There will be, the financials will be slightly different depending on the geology of any one area, as well as the energy use, etc. And I feel like it's probably too early to say exactly where it's going to be financially applicable and where it will not be. Plymouth, because it does have a lot of sand, that does not have a lot of thermal transmissivity. And so it might be harder to do. On the other hand, you've got the sea right next to you. I would put a titanium seawater heat pump underneath a lot of the docks going into the harbor. You then run that thermal energy back through town. That is the biggest source and sink you could possibly imagine. You can take, heating and cooling off of the sea. And if you just took the heating, you would be returning it to the, closer to the pre-climate change temperature.
Terrific, thanks.
Yeah, in Toronto and Chicago and other places, they pull temperature off of the lakes there and deliver a cooling system to all of the big buildings in both, or to most of the big buildings in Toronto and Chicago. And so it's just, that's an easy system to do. That's slightly, very similar to what I'm talking about too.
Thanks.
Really?
Well, first, thank you, Hampton, because that was one of my questions. So I appreciate that you already asked it. The other question was, I just wanted to clarify, Audrey, when you were talking about the one person who's the holdout when everyone else on the block has signed up for this system, that they would have the choice of propane. You are talking a propane tank and not maintaining the LNG line. Is that correct?
Yeah, so not maintaining the natural gas line, but instead, and utilities, they all deliver one service. A water company, water utility delivers water. An electric utility delivers electricity. These utilities are not Walmart, and so they deliver one essential service each. And in this case, it would be thermal, heating and cooling. So go ahead, sorry.
No, that's right. I'm all set.
Thanks.
Anatole, then Steve.
Yes, Audrey, you
Mhm.
showed the picture with two rows of single-family homes with the geothermal line in the middle between them. Do you envision in the future? Do you envision that it completely changes, replaces the gas lines,
Yes,
right?
that's the whole idea. It takes up, it just takes that right of way, that grant of location in the street. And it's the way forward. It's grafted onto that gas tree, and you remove the gas.
Amazing. And you mentioned the shallow boreholes. What do you mean shallow? How shallow are they?
It'll always depend on the energy density of that particular location and what that energy density, what's needed there. But in general, it's going to be, like the Eversource one, they're probably about average 700 feet deep, which in geothermal is shallow. And
Wow,
so,
amazing.
Amazing.
yep.
Steve.
Audrey, I just want to repeat something I think I heard you say. The geothermal network systems are more efficient than air source heat pumps because the heat source and sinks are more or less the same temperature year round underground. So the electricity consumption would be less with the network system than with air source heat pumps, right? So
Yes.
that might partially answer Paul's problem that he's paying more because of the electricity consumption. Can you give us an idea approximately how much more efficient the geothermal is than air source heat pumps?
So everybody will, it's called COP, coefficient of performance. And on average, and it's hard to know because there aren't so many thermal networks installed, and they, like a car, will be different depending on who's driving them, how they're engineered, on what terrain, et cetera. So there will be some, mileage difference per gallon, right? If you can use that analogy. But in general, from the information we have, they'll be about twice as efficient or more than a.
So twice as efficient, does that mean that you'd consume half as much electricity as you
Yeah,
would with air source heat pump?
yeah. So a gas system, every 1 unit of energy you put into a gas system, you get less than 1 unit of energy into your home because some of it goes up your chimney. For every 1 unit you use in an air source heat pump, you get on average between 2 and 3 units of energy into or out of your home, right? Because you're using that energy to move already naturally occurring heat into or out of your home, right? And with this system, you should, for every 1 unit of energy, you should get 5 to 6 units of energy on average into or out of your building. And so
So
they're
Paul, would that reduce
Well,
your electricity bill enough that it would be, if you'd
Well,
only had a
let's-
geothermal?
let's be clear, Steve. I would have loved to put in a geothermal heat pump. Geothermal heat pumps, however, are exponentially more expensive to install.
Oh, yeah.
than
I
air source
understand
heat
that,
pump.
but as far as the operating cost goes, what I was talking about.
Well, if you can help me get one, I'm glad to give you my air source as a trade.
Talk to Audrey.
I'll do that tomorrow morning. I actually priced a geothermal system and thought pretty seriously about going that route. But it's dramatically more expensive, and you know, I'm not a youngster.
Yeah, which is why it's so
The
lovely
payback would have been long.
having gas utilities do it, because gas utilities, what they exist for, all utilities, is to install expensive infrastructure that to deliver an essential service that we all need. And then to basically socialize that cost across all of us and over decades. So it's not too much for any one person.
If
And so
that
that's
happens
why
in front of
they
my
should
house
do it.
after I spent the money for my air source heat pump, I'll be both happy and sad.
Yes, me too. Same here.
So I'd like to have one last question. Anatole, you've already had a couple questions, but maybe you could have a brief one, and then we will ask Audrey where we can go to follow what's going on with geothermal so that we can follow this exciting trend. So Anatole, what's your question?
My question is there another pilot project that you planning for after Framingham?
Yes, as I said, HEET is installing with Eversource a second phase of that original networked geothermal installation that will become, that will be interconnected, and hopefully will show that it's both more efficient and less expensive the bigger the system grows. And I will say briskly for HEETlabs, I am working on innovation. There's a variety of interesting, research. Currently, I'm working on how to pay for the building retrofits, so that everybody can retrofit their home to be all electric for free. And so that's check out heatlabs.org, and you can find some papers on there. There'll be more over time. Judith, did you have a quick question?
Would you be interested in an experimental system in Hull that uses the heat in the water? I mean, this is a peninsula. We've got lots of water.
I would be deeply interested. I am not a gas utility. I am not.
How do we
not
find somebody to talk to?
talk to your, both your electric utility, your gas utility, your municipality, and developers. Any one of those might be interested in doing that. The electric utility, if they have to move to electricity for everyone, that would be the most efficient and least expensive system. And so if the electric and the gas utility get together on this, it'd be pretty nice. And yeah, I think taking it off the water would be incredible.
Can I get your phone number from Linda so I understand it better?
Yes. Yeah,
Thank
or
you.
email is probably better.
I'll
Okay.
get you her email. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So where can we what can we subscribe to or watch to keep up with what's going on in this
So
area?
Heat covers all the networks, geothermal, thermal network stuff. I'll be doing building retrofits and a few other exciting projects. HEETlabs just started, so it's only early days.
Mm-hmm.
You can sign up for the blog on HEETlabs. You can sign up for the newsletter with HEET. Many options available.
Okay.
It's HEET,
Yeah.
or .org, or HEETlabs.org.
Thank you.
Awesome.
I want to
Thanks
thank
so
you
much.
so much, Audrey.
Yeah,
I
pleasure.
think we all needed something that was on an up note, and this was really, really outstanding.
Thank you. Yeah,
Thank you.
it helps me.